It was early March in rural Vermont, and I remember because the snow was still piled like slumped shoulders along the garden beds. I'd just finished making a double batch of buttermilk pancakes, the kind my eldest grandson, Luca, used to devour 3 at a time when he was younger. I was wrapping them in foil, adding a little post-it note, "For my birthday, boy, with all my love," when the realization hit me. There hadn't been a call. Not from my daughter, not from Luca, not even a group text with the time and place. I'd missed nothing. I hadn't been invited. It all started, I suppose, when Celeste, my daughter, met Garrett. A polished man, always in loafers without socks, sipping espresso and quoting obscure philosophers like they were childhood friends. He came from old money, that crisp, whispery kind that smells of mahogany desks and summer homes. His family owned a vineyard somewhere in Sonoma, or maybe it was his grandfather who did. The details changed depending on the audience. But what stayed consistent was the way Celeste softened when he entered a room, like the woman I raised, who once punched a boy for mocking her brother's lisp, had melted into someone else. They met at a golf club, one of those marble-heavy establishments where I'd never feel comfortable walking in without being mistaken for staff. Celeste was working there as a hospitality manager. Garrett spotted her across the green, as she tells it, like she was the only woman in the world who knew what a wine opener was. I'll admit, I didn't like the story from the start. It sounded rehearsed. Too clean. But she was happy, or at least she said she was, and so I tucked my doubts away, like I've done with many things over the years. They married quickly. Within 2 years, they had Luca and then sweet Hazel, who came out with a shock of black hair and a scream that rattled the windows. That's when they moved into that sterile modern house on Maple Hollow Road, all white walls and polished concrete. I was invited to stay in the guest suite on occasion, a glorified basement with an essential oil diffuser and no windows. Garrett was always at work when I visited. He worked in strategic consultancy, which, from what I gathered, meant he took long calls in French and had strong opinions about fountain pens. He greeted me politely, always, and avoided conversation like it was a sales pitch he didn't have time for. Celeste and I used to really talk. After the kids were asleep, we'd sit in the kitchen with tea and whisper like we used to when she was a teenager sneaking snacks past curfew. But things changed. She grew clipped. Defensive. As though my very presence unspooled some thread she had worked hard to keep tight. I suppose the final rift came when I suggested Garrett take a more hands-on approach with the children. They need a father's voice, I'd said, thinking of how wild Luca had become, leaping off couches and throwing tantrums like grenades. I wasn't unkind, not intentionally, but I may have said that pancakes weren't a parenting strategy. Celeste looked away when I said it. 2 days later, she told me Garrett thought it best I take a break from visiting. He says it's disruptive, she said, eyes cast on her mug. He says you're too involved. Too involved. After I'd changed every diaper, stayed up through every fever, held her hand when she thought she was miscarrying. Too involved. And now no birthday invitation. I looked at the foil-wrapped pancakes on the counter. Honey-glazed, golden-edged, perfect. The kind only I made the way Luca liked. I sat down at the table and cried into my hands quietly. Dignified, if heartbreak can ever be that. Outside, the snow began to fall again. I didn't call Celeste. Not at first. My pride, like the old oaks in the backyard, was stubborn and scarred. Instead, I waited. I told myself maybe the invitation got lost. Maybe Garrett forgot to add me to whatever digital planning spreadsheet they surely used. But then I saw the photos. Celeste had posted them on something called LiveSnap, an app one never signed up for but could still view. There was Luca standing under a balloon arch shaped like the number 10, a gold crown askew on his mop of sandy curls. Hazel was wearing a tutu, frosting on her nose, clutching a party favor. The caption read, "Thank you to everyone who made today so special. Our Luca is 10. Everyone." I zoomed in. There was Garrett's mother, Pamela, wearing a pink scarf I once gave Celeste as a birthday gift. There was Garrett's father, stiff in a blazer, standing beside some man with a therapy dog vest and a tray of canapes. There were neighbors, a family from Celeste's book club, even their mailman. But not me. That night, I paced my kitchen in wool socks in silence, the pancakes untouched. I kept expecting the phone to ring. It didn't. I dialed once. Hung up. Dialed again. Celeste picked up on the third try. "Mom," she said, her voice soft like someone trying to sneak through a minefield. "Luca's birthday," I said. My voice cracked. I saw the photos. She was quiet. "He didn't even tell me," I whispered. "Garrett thought it would be best," she said. "He felt it might be stressful. Given everything." "Stressful for whom?" Another pause. "Mom, he said if you came, he threatened to make a scene. I didn't want that. Not for the kids." I sat down hard. My legs had given up pretending to hold me up. You could have fought for me, I said. You could have said no. Her sigh was a cold wind. It's not that simple. But it was. It was as simple as love. Or lack of it. She started crying, not loudly, not theatrically. Just those tiny, guilty sobs you can't swallow down. I'm sorry, Mom, she said. I thought I could make it work. But he said, if you showed up again, he said you'd never be welcome in this house again. There it was. The banishment. I hung up. Not out of anger, though it simmered like a kettle just about to boil, but because I couldn't listen anymore. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, the kind of stillness that buzzes in your ears. Then I took the pancakes out to the woodshed and fed them, one by one, to the fire. That night, I didn't dream. Not of Luca. Not of Hazel. Not even of Celeste. Just smoke and the faint scent of honey turning to ash. The next morning, I woke with that kind of heaviness you can feel in your teeth. I boiled water for tea out of habit but forgot the bag. I stared at the calendar and realized it was Garrett's birthday in 3 days. I thought of buying him a card, a passive-aggressive one, something with a dog in a party hat and too much glitter, but the idea soured as soon as it formed. Instead, I baked. Not for him, Lord no, for the children. For Luca and Hazel. I made honey cake, the one I used to sneak into Luca's lunchbox with a note that said, "You're my brave boy." And I crocheted a little fox for Hazel. Her favorite animal. Not a toy store plush, but something real. Something made stitch by stitch in the quiet of my living room. I boxed it up carefully, the honey cake, wrapped tight in parchment. The fox, tucked in tissue paper with a heart stitched on its paw, and a note. Not bitter. Just love. For my sweet ones. I love you more than sunshine. Grandma. I addressed it to Celeste's house, though my hand trembled as I wrote the address. I debated including a return label. In the end, I did. I wanted them to know where the love came from, even if it wasn't welcome. I walked it down to the post office myself. Judy was working the desk, all lipstick and rhinestone pins, and she didn't ask questions. Just weighed the package and slid it into the bin with a nod. That night, I waited. The next day, silence. The next, the same. Then on Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a photo. Hazel, clutching the fox, eyes wide with delight. Luca beside her, mid-bite into the honey cake, crumbs on his cheek. No words. Just that photo. I cried right there on the porch swing. It wasn't much. It wasn't a reunion. But it was a crack in the wall, a light through the cement. Then came the knock. A soft knock. Hesitant. I opened the door half expecting to see Celeste. Instead, it was Pamela, Garrett's mother, in her mauve pea coat and patent leather shoes, like she had walked straight out of a magazine ad for mature elegance. She handed me a manila envelope. "He doesn't know I'm here," she said. I opened it slowly. Inside were drawings. Luca's. One was of me, gray curls and all flipping pancakes in a cartoon pan. Hazel had scribbled over the bottom corner in pink, hearts, and lopsided stars. Pamela was watching me, her hands clasped in front like she was praying. "They miss you," she said. "But it's complicated." "I know," I whispered. She hesitated. "Garrett, he's not a bad man. Just proud. He sees correction as criticism." "And Celeste?" I asked. She sighed. "She's afraid. He makes the decisions. She just adapts." I stared at the drawings. They shook in my hands. Pamela took a step closer. "If you ever need someone to talk to." I'm not her. But I am a mother too. Then she turned and walked away, her shoes clicking softly against the gravel. That night, I pulled down the tin of cocoa and made myself hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, the way Hazel liked it. I drank it slowly, wrapped in the afghan my mother had made when I had Celeste. 3 generations stitched into one blanket. I held the envelope to my chest and closed my eyes. No birthdays. No invitations. But still, love found a way in. And sometimes I thought that's enough to keep breathing. The weather warmed early that April like Vermont was trying to make up for its long winter tantrum. The lilacs budded faster than usual and my old wind chimes, the ones Celeste made for me in Girl Scouts with mismatched forks and buttons, came back to life. It was a Wednesday when Hazel appeared on my front steps. Alone. Well, not entirely. Pamela's Volvo idled at the curb, but Hazel stood there by herself, clutching her little pink backpack and the crocheted fox like a talisman. I hadn't seen her in 3 months. "Hi, Nana," she said, soft as the first spring rain. I nearly dropped the dish I was drying. I knelt down and opened my arms. She ran to me. No hesitation, no question. Just warm, 6-year-old limbs around my neck and a hiccup of a sob. "Mama said we're just visiting," she whispered. Not moving back. Pamela came up the walk slowly, holding a paper bag and a coffee. She's been asking for you every day, she said. Celeste finally said yes to a short visit as long as Garrett doesn't know. It wasn't what I wanted to hear. I wanted Celeste, not her permission, but it would do. For now. Hazel and I spent the afternoon making pancakes, reading the same storybook 3 times in a row, and brushing the tangles out of her hair while she sang off-key. She told me about school, her friend Mia, and a boy named Jamie who eats his boogers. Every word was gold. Then she asked the question, "Why doesn't Mommy let us come here anymore?" I paused the brush midair. "Sometimes," I said, choosing my words like stepping over ice. "Grown-ups get confused about what love looks like." She frowned. "But I love you. And Mommy does too." She said so when she cried. I nodded, my throat closing. "I know, sweetheart. And I love you more than pancakes and ponies and peanut butter combined." She laughed at that. Her little fox tumbled off the bed. At dusk, Pamela returned. "She'll be back tomorrow morning," she said. Celeste agreed to let her spend the night. I blinked. She did. Pamela shrugged. "I think she's starting to feel the weight of it all. Even Garrett's temper has limits." Hazel stayed that night in the room we used to call hers. The one with glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling. I watched her sleep, curled around the fox, and my heart broke all over again, not from pain, but from hope. In the morning, we made pancakes. She flipped one herself, shrieking with delight as it splattered lopsided. I walked her out to the car, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "Tell your brother I miss him too." Hazel looked up, serious. "He misses you, Nana. He just pretends not to so he won't cry." As the car pulled away, I stood in the driveway, hand to my chest. For the first time in a long while, I let myself believe, not just wish, that maybe the door wasn't locked. Maybe it was only stuck. And I had strong enough hands to knock again. The next week passed like a dream I was afraid to wake from. Pamela brought Hazel again, twice. The second time, Luca came too. He didn't run to me. He didn't even smile. He stood on the steps with his arms crossed, gaze locked on the porch floor like it held secrets he wasn't ready to share. I opened the door slowly, cautiously. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. He looked up. "We can't stay long. Dad doesn't know." That stung. Not the words I'd heard, worse, but the weight they carried on a 10-year-old's back. They came inside anyway. Hazel zipped through the house like a bee in bloom, but Luca lingered in the entryway, his eyes scanning the walls. "You haven't changed anything," he mumbled. "Not much to change," I said gently. "This place already knows who it belongs to." He nodded, almost imperceptibly, and then sat down at the kitchen table. We didn't talk about Garrett. Or Celeste. We played Uno. We made grilled cheese. Hazel fed the fox a pancake crust like it had a real appetite. And when Pamela came to pick them up, Luca hugged me. Not a big hug. Not tight. But his arms wrapped around me and he held on for a moment longer than necessary. It was something. But peace never lasts long in a house that's been emptied by estrangement. 2 nights later, Celeste showed up. Not with the children. Not with warning. She walked through the front door like she used to, shoulders back, chin lifted like armor. "He found out," she said, dropping her purse on the hallway bench. "Garrett. He knows they've been here." I stood still, holding a damp dish towel. "Did you tell him?" "No," she said quickly. Hazel left the fox out. He recognized it. Asked where it came from. She tried to lie, God bless her, but you know how kids are. I nodded. Celeste rubbed her temples. "He's furious. Threatened to take them to his parents' place. Said if I can't set boundaries, he will." My hands began to tremble. I gripped the towel tighter. "And what do you say, Celeste? What do you want?" She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time in years I saw her as more than my daughter. I saw a woman breaking beneath her own silence. "I don't know," she whispered. That's when I knew. She wasn't choosing him. She was just surviving him. I put the towel down. "Then let me help. Let me be your mother again." Her eyes welled up. She shook her head, not in refusal but in disbelief. "You shouldn't have to fix this," she said. "It's not your job." I smiled, bitter and sweet. "Honey, it's always been my job. But this time you have to stand next to me when we do it." She didn't say yes. But she didn't leave either. And that night, she stayed for dinner, just the 2 of us, grilled cheese and soup, like the nights when she was little and sick and couldn't sleep. When she left, she kissed my cheek. No words. But her eyes said enough. "I'm trying." And sometimes trying is the bravest thing you can do. A week passed with no visits, no calls. Just the echo of grilled cheese memories and that kiss on my cheek. Then came the envelope. No stamp, just a single fold of parchment left tucked between my screen door and the frame. The handwriting was unmistakably Celeste's. Not the loopy teenage scrawl she used to write on birthday cards, but her adult script. Careful, slanted, exhausted. I sat at the kitchen table to read it, morning light pouring in like mercy. Mom. I don't know where to start. I guess I should have written this years ago when Luca was born. Maybe even before that, when Garrett first started drawing lines around me that I called love. He's not cruel, not in the way you read about. He doesn't scream or hit. He doesn't belittle. But he controls. Quietly. Constantly. And I let him. When you told me he needed to step up, I wanted to agree. God, I wanted to. But I was afraid. Of the fight it would cause. Of the shame it would uncover. I blamed you because it was easier. Safer. You were always strong. You could handle it. But now? Now I look at Hazel hugging that fox. I see Luca staring at pancakes like they're a forbidden treasure. And I feel something cracking. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of making you the problem when the problem has been my silence. I don't know what happens next. But I want you to know I love you. I see now what I refused to see. You didn't ruin anything. You kept us together longer than we deserved. Love. Celeste. I folded the letter with trembling hands. Set it beside the sugar bowl like it was sacred. Then I stood. I cleaned the house top to bottom. Not for anyone else. For myself. For the girl I used to be. For the woman who forgot she was allowed to take up space. I scrubbed the baseboards. Polished the old hutch. I even rearranged the photographs. Put Celeste's childhood picture back on the mantel, next to Luca's macaroni frame. That evening, I lit the oil lamp and sat on the porch with a blanket and a bowl of warm soup. The wind rustled through the birches. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. I was just home. And she was finding her way back. 2 days after the letter, Celeste showed up again. This time it was early, barely past 8. She looked pale, pulled together in the way only desperate women manage. Makeup perfect, breath shallow, hands clenched. I need to talk, she said. I nodded, moved aside. She didn't even take off her coat. He gave me an ultimatum, she said, standing in my kitchen like a statue left in the rain. He said if I take the kids to see you again, if I keep letting you interfere, he'll file for custody. Partial now. Full if I continue to display instability. The word caught in my chest. Instability. She laughed, a dry, exhausted sound. He means love. Nurture. Anything that isn't wrapped in a white-collar silence. I pulled a chair out for her. She sat, slowly, like her bones ached. I can't go back to how things were, she whispered. But I don't know how to go forward either. Not without risking everything. I reached across the table, took her hand. Then you take one step. Just one. The right step. The rest will follow. She cried silent tears, the kind that sting more because they've waited so long to fall. We sat like that for a long time. Then she said, I want to leave him. The air stopped moving. I'm scared, she added. I don't know where to start. What if I ruin their lives? You won't, I said. Staying in silence ruins lives. You're giving them permission to choose something better. That's what mothers do. She nodded. No more words. Just a squeeze of my hand and the first hint of peace on her face. The next morning she came again. This time with the kids. Just for breakfast, she said. Just for now. But the way Hazel clung to me, the way Luca slid his plate closer for seconds, it wasn't just breakfast. It was the beginning of a different life. After they left, I stood in the doorway, the scent of maple syrup and warm fruit still hanging in the air. And I knew we were no longer tiptoeing around Garrett's house of glass. Celeste had picked up a stone. And she was ready to throw. Celeste didn't come the next day. Or the one after. I told myself not to worry, change takes time. But by the third day, my hands were restless. I cleaned the same drawer twice, alphabetized the spice rack, then rescattered it because it felt too neat to be real. When dusk came, I sat on the porch and stared down the gravel road until the stars began to blink. Then the phone rang. It's done, she said. My breath caught. I told him, she continued. I told Garrett I want a separation. I said I want space. I said the kids need to see their grandmother. I heard the tremble in her voice. She wasn't calling for praise. She was calling because she needed an anchor. What did he say? I asked. He broke a glass, she replied. Threw it at the wall. But not at me. He walked out. Said I'd regret this. A chill rolled through me. Are you safe? I am. The kids are with me. We're staying at Pamela's for now. She offered. That surprised me. Pamela, the woman who once wore my scarf like a trophy, now offering her home as a sanctuary. I don't know what comes next, Celeste said. Lawyers probably. Maybe worse. You're not alone, I said. You've never been alone. Even when you thought you were. She was quiet a moment. Then she said, "Can we come over tomorrow? All of us? For dinner?" I nodded before I remembered she couldn't see me. "Yes," I said. "Yes, please." I spent that night in the kitchen. I made everything from scratch: roasted chicken with rosemary, mashed potatoes with cream, a chocolate cake thick with memory and butter. I used the blue tablecloth, the one embroidered with forget-me-nots, and set 4 plates. When they arrived, the kids ran in like the past months had never happened. Hazel darted to the couch with her fox. Luca helped himself to a biscuit. Celeste paused in the doorway, looking around the room like it was a painting she used to know by heart. "You remembered the cake," she whispered. "You remembered me," I replied. "We ate. We laughed. We breathed." Later, as I tucked Hazel into her old bed, she looked up at me and asked, "Are we going to live here now?" I hesitated. "Not yet, sweet pea. But maybe someday." She nodded and curled up, fox tucked under her chin. Downstairs, Celeste sat at the table, tracing the rim of her mug. "You won't let go easily." "Neither will we," I said. "But we've got more than rage. We've got roots." She looked up and smiled, tired but real. And I realized the break wasn't just from Garrett. It was from fear. And in that space, the rubble of what she left, something stronger had begun to grow. We didn't hear from Garrett for 2 weeks. Not a call. Not a knock. Just silence, the kind that buzzes louder with every passing day. Then, one morning, Celeste found a letter shoved under Pamela's door, folded, unmarked, all caps block printing like someone trying to disguise their handwriting. No greeting. No signature. Just 5 words. "You'll regret this. You'll lose." Pamela called the police. They wrote it down, shrugged. "No threats of violence," they said. "Nothing actionable. Just fear, the kind you're expected to swallow and smile through." Celeste didn't cry this time. She got quiet. The kind of quiet that rattles the bones. I found her that afternoon in my garden, kneeling by the irises, pulling weeds with bare hands like the pain might ground her. "He's watching," she whispered. "I can feel it." I knelt beside her, pressed a trowel into the earth. "Then let him see you grow." She looked at me, something fierce flickering in her eyes. "He's going to fight. For custody. For the house. Maybe even for the kids' school, their routines, everything." "And what are you going to fight for?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she stood, brushed the soil from her palms. Freedom. That night, she called a lawyer, not just for advice, but to begin. The days blurred after that. Court documents. Mediation notices. Arguments over who got what. Garrett, of course, wanted the facade. Full visitation, joint decisions, no disruptions. He didn't mention the kids once in his filings, only structures, expectations, control. Hazel started having nightmares. Luca got quieter. He stopped drawing, something that used to be his sanctuary. I bought new crayons. We baked cookies. We whispered stories under blankets and left the porch light on a little longer. One evening, after a hard call with the lawyer, Celeste stood in my kitchen, holding a photo of Luca at 5, missing teeth, frosting on his nose. "I can't believe I almost lost this," she said. "You didn't," I said. "You're here. He's here. And we're not going anywhere." We hugged. And for the first time, she let herself shake in my arms. Let Garrett rage. Let the papers stack high. We were ready now, not just to defend, but to reclaim. We'd already lost so much. But we hadn't lost each other. And that, I realized, was what he never understood. We weren't made of convenience. We were made of survival. Spring deepened. The court date loomed. And yet, under that shadow, life insisted on blooming. Hazel started singing again, nonsense songs about cats and clouds and magic crayons. Luca asked if he could plant a garden. We gave him a patch near the porch. He picked tomatoes and carrots. "Root things," he said with a shrug. "Things that hold on." Celeste filed her formal statement. It wasn't just legal, it was a declaration. She detailed the control, the isolation, the silence that had filled their house like fog. Her lawyer warned her, Garrett would retaliate. He did. 2 days later, the kids' school received a letter. Garrett claimed Celeste was emotionally unstable and that the children were being influenced by an unfit environment. The school called her in for a meeting. She didn't go alone. She brought me. I didn't say a word in the meeting. I didn't have to. I sat beside her, a grandmother in a knit cardigan with hands weathered by years of cooking and cleaning and carrying, and I looked them all in the eye. Sometimes presence is the loudest voice. The principal nodded slowly as Celeste explained. The counselor listened, tapping a pen against her notepad. And then Luca's teacher spoke up. "He's calmer now," she said. "More focused. He smiles more. Something has changed, and for the better." That afternoon, Celeste got a call from her lawyer. The judge had denied Garrett's emergency petition. We celebrated with root beer floats and grilled cheese. Hazel made a crown out of foil and declared Luca king of carrots. He didn't argue, but the relief was short-lived. A week later, Garrett showed up. He didn't knock. Just stood at the edge of the driveway, arms folded, his Audi idling behind him like a predator with its engine purring. Celeste was inside. I was outside pruning roses. He called my name. Calmly. Like this was any other Saturday and he hadn't tried to erase me from the family. I wiped my hands on my apron, walked to the edge of the drive. You need to go, I said. He smiled, that tight, rehearsed smile of a man who thought he still had leverage. I came to see my kids, he said. They're not here, I lied. He took a step forward. You always did meddle, didn't you? I didn't flinch. I looked him square in the eye. They're not your shield anymore. And Celeste isn't your subject. We're done playing pretend. For a second I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not anger. Not control. Fear. He turned, climbed into his car, and drove off without another word. I went inside. Celeste was at the window, trembling. But when I walked in, she turned to me and said, You didn't back down. Neither did you, I said. We didn't win anything that day, not legally, not financially. But we stood our ground. And that, I realized, was how women like us reclaimed the world. One stand at a time. The garden took root faster than expected. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the soil. Or maybe it was just that we finally had something to believe in again. Luca's carrots poked through the dirt in small, defiant bursts. Hazel named each one after her favorite storybook characters. I caught her whispering to them sometimes, like they were old friends who needed reassurance. Celeste began waking up before the kids. She made coffee. Read books she never finished. There were still hard days, quiet ones when she stared out the window too long or flinched at a sudden sound. But there were also moments of light. I caught her humming once. The same lullaby I used to sing to her when she was 5 and feverish. One morning, Luca handed me a drawing. It showed a house, not their old one, this one was ours. My porch swing. Hazel's window with stars. Celeste standing between me and the kids, all of us holding hands. Is this your dream house? I asked. He shook his head. It's not a dream if it's real. I bit my cheek. Nodded. Hung the picture on the fridge. Celeste's lawyer called that afternoon. Garrett had proposed mediation. He wants to look reasonable, she muttered, hanging up. Wants to avoid a court battle he knows he'll lose. Do you want to go? I asked. I want peace, she said. If this gets us there faster, maybe it's worth the performance. She met him in a downtown office flanked by lawyers. I stayed home with the kids. We made pancakes. Luca flipped his first one without burning it. Hazel made whipped cream with too much sugar and laughed until she fell off the stool. When Celeste came home, she looked tired but not broken. He's agreed to joint custody, she said. But I get primary residence. And he won't contest the kids seeing you. My knees nearly buckled. He said he wants to move to Chicago, she added. Start fresh. Maybe that's his way of saving face. I didn't care why. I only cared that the shadow had finally begun to lift. That night, Celeste set the table while Hazel lit candles and Luca chose music. We ate together like a family, real, messy healing. And for the first time in what felt like forever, we didn't speak about Garrett. We didn't need to. We had outlived him. The first weekend of summer arrived with a soft breeze and sunlight that clung to everything like golden dust. We picked strawberries at a neighbor's farm and Hazel insisted on carrying the whole basket, though it took both arms and no shortage of dramatic grunting. I watched her, barefoot and determined, and thought, this is what Garrett tried to steal. Not just time. Not just memories. But joy. The mediation agreement held. Garrett left town within a month of signing. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't try to take the kids for a farewell weekend. He just packed his things and disappeared into the Chicago skyline, like a man who'd rather vanish than lose with grace. Celeste told me she felt nothing. Not relief. Not regret. Just quiet. Like someone had finally turned off the background noise. She got a job at the library. Part-time but steady. She shelved books, ran story hour on Fridays, even started a poetry night for single mothers, though no one called it that. They called it Pages and Peace. It made her laugh. Luca started drawing again. This time, not houses, people. The first one he showed me was of me, standing in the garden, sun hat and all, surrounded by carrots with tiny eyes. They're guarding you, he said. Hazel learned to ride her bike. She fell twice, scraped her knee, and shouted, "Don't help me," through gritted teeth as she climbed back on. At night, the house was full of noise again, bath time giggles, the thump of running feet, Celeste's tired singing. Sometimes I'd sit in my chair with a book in my lap, not reading, just listening. One evening, after the kids were in bed, Celeste came out to the porch with 2 mugs of tea. "I told someone about you today," she said. I looked up. "A woman at the library," she continued. She was talking about her mother, how she couldn't forgive her. "And I told her about you. About everything. About how you stayed. Even when we didn't ask you to. Even when we pushed you away. I didn't say anything. Just sipped my tea." She asked how I forgave myself, Celeste added. And I told her I haven't. Not all the way. But I'm learning. One meal, one moment at a time. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up." The wind picked up. The porch creaked softly. In the distance, a dog barked once, then quieted. I looked at her, my daughter, whole again, and said, "You never gave me a reason to." The stars came out. One by one. Just like us. Shaken. But still shining. There's a kind of peace that doesn't announce itself. It just shows up, quiet and stubborn, and makes itself at home. That's what filled our days that summer. Not perfection. Not closure. Just a rhythm. Hazel learned to snap green beans. Luca built a birdhouse out of leftover wood and called it the Sky Hotel. Celeste started leaving her phone in the kitchen drawer during dinner. I began sleeping through the night again, not every night, but most, and when I didn't, it was no longer from ache. It was the quiet stir of a heart still healing. We stopped counting the days since Garrett left. It wasn't a mark anymore. Just something that happened. Like a storm that came and went and left behind both wreckage and the smell of clean air. One afternoon, I went up to the attic to find my old photo albums. I hadn't opened them in years. They were dusty and heavy and smelled faintly of cedar. I carried them down, laid them across the dining table, and waited. Hazel was the first to climb into my lap. "Who's that?" she asked, pointing at a picture of Celeste at 7, wearing a crown of dandelions and a gap-toothed grin. "That's your mama," I said. Right after she won the backyard talent show with a song about worms. Hazel giggled like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. Luca hovered nearby, pretending not to care. But later I caught him flipping through the pages on his own, one finger tracing a photo of Celeste holding him in the hospital. "Did she cry?" he asked. "Oh honey," I said, smiling. "She sobbed so hard the nurses had to bring her tissues and crackers." He nodded like that was a story he'd been waiting to hear his whole life. That night, Celeste joined me on the porch again. She looked tired, not from worry, but from work, from life, from laughing too hard at dinner. "I think I want to get a dog," she said suddenly. "A little one. Something that can't knock over Hazel." I laughed. "As long as it doesn't shed on my quilt." She looked at me then. Really looked. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" I thought about it. About the boxes in the attic. The scar on her wrist from a panhandle burn when she was 15. The silence that once lived in her eyes. The sound of her children laughing downstairs. "Yes," I said. "Not perfect. But okay." The porch light flickered. She reached up and screwed the bulb tighter. The glow returned. Some things don't need to be replaced. Just reconnected. Later that week, Celeste came home from the library with a second-hand guitar. She'd always wanted to learn but never made the time. Now she sat under the birch tree, Hazel curled beside her, strumming clumsy chords while Luca rolled a soccer ball across the yard. She wasn't good, not yet. But her voice, soft and unsure, wove itself through the breeze like thread pulled through worn linen. It hit me then we were building something entirely new. Not rebuilding the past. Not trying to fit the broken pieces back where they used to be. This was different. Hazel's laughter had changed. Fuller. Luca's shoulders had softened. Celeste hummed while she cooked. And me? I wasn't the same woman who stood on that porch crying over forgotten pancakes. I was still the mother. Still the grandmother. But I was also someone else now, someone who knew her own worth even when others didn't. That Sunday, Celeste made breakfast. She used my recipe for the first time. "They won't taste like yours," she warned. But they did. Maybe not sweeter. Maybe not crispier. But full of intention. Full of love. Afterward, we sat around the table passing the syrup back and forth. Luca licking his fingers and Hazel telling us a made-up story about a pancake princess and a syrup dragon. Celeste looked at me across the table and smiled. A smile that said, "We made it." Not unscathed, but unbroken. And I smiled back, knowing we still had more story left to tell. Hazel's 7th birthday was coming, and this time, there were no whispered negotiations, no sidelong glances, no passive texts from Pamela asking if I'd be okay sitting this one out. This time, Celeste planned it with me. We stood in the kitchen one afternoon, recipe cards strewn across the counter, and Hazel scribbled wish list taped to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a tomato. She wants a butterfly cake, Celeste said, but she drew it with wings and sparkles and maybe jet boosters? I laughed. Easy. Just need 3 layers, food coloring, and a little miracle. We baked for 2 days. Luca helped ice the cupcakes, every one different, and Hazel insisted on personally placing a jelly bean on each one. She called them butterfly eggs. Celeste bought fabric bunting and borrowed folding chairs. I pulled out my old embroidered tablecloth, the one I'd saved for good occasions. It was the first time I'd used it in 5 years. The morning of the party, I woke before dawn. I crept downstairs, made coffee, and just stood in the kitchen. Listening? There was no silence to brace against, no ache hiding in the corners. Just birds, just sunlight crawling through the window, just the hum of a refrigerator holding everything we needed. Guests came, Celeste's co-workers, some of the neighborhood kids, a few friends from school. Pamela came too. She brought flowers and stood next to me for a long while, sipping lemonade. I never said thank you, she murmured. For what? For loving them when I didn't know how to step in. I said nothing. Just patted her hand. Hazel opened presents with theatrical flair. Luca helped her read the cards, standing proudly like a royal scribe. When it came time for the cake, we lit 7 candles and I stood beside Celeste, each of us holding one side of the tray. Hazel closed her eyes tight, made a wish, and blew so hard half the jelly beans went flying. After everyone left, the house quieted. There were streamers in the doorway and crumbs on every surface, but no one rushed to clean. We sat in the mess, Hazel half asleep in my lap, Celeste picking frosting from her fingers. Luca yawned and said, "This was the best party ever." Celeste looked at me and whispered, "This is the birthday I want her to remember." I nodded, because I understood. This wasn't just Hazel's birthday. It was ours. The birthday that came. The one we thought we'd lost. The one that found us anyway. Summer faded into gold. The birch leaves turned first, little yellow fans spiraling to the ground, and the air began to carry that familiar scent of endings. Not the sad kind. The kind that makes you want to light a candle and bake something warm. School started. Hazel wore her new backpack like armor and insisted on carrying her own lunchbox. Luca was in 5th grade now, taller, quieter. He didn't hold my hand at the bus stop anymore, but he still waved from the window, even when he thought no one was looking. Celeste began taking evening walks alone. Sometimes with her guitar slung over her shoulder, sometimes with just her thoughts. She said it helped clear her mind. I knew it helped her believe in a future, one she was building brick by brick. One afternoon, I was in the garden thinning the beets when Celeste came out with 2 cups of lemonade and a folded piece of paper. "It's from Garrett," she said, handing me the note. I didn't flinch. Just wiped my hands and opened it. He had moved permanently. Started seeing someone new. Said he hoped the children were well. That he would always care for them from afar. No threats. No claims. Just closure, signed in ink. Celeste exhaled. I didn't expect it to feel like this. Like what? Like peace. We drank the lemonade slowly. The sun slipped behind the trees. Somewhere, a neighbor's wind chime sang a broken lullaby. That night, Hazel asked if we could start a family journal, something she'd seen in a book. Just a notebook where we write little things, she explained. Happy stuff. Like the good kind of secrets. Celeste found an old leather-bound diary in her closet, and we took turns writing. Hazel drew pictures. Luca wrote a single sentence each day. Things like, "Grandma's soup is magic," or "Hazel talks in her sleep." Celeste and I filled the margins with bits of ourselves. The scent of garlic from a Sunday stew. The way Hazel giggled with her whole face. A quote from a book. A recipe for forgiveness. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Celeste brought the journal to me. "You start tomorrow," she said, pressing a pen into my hand. So I did. I wrote. Today we lived without apology. We laughed without bitterness. We sang while folding laundry. The house was full of crumbs and crayons and grace. And I sat in the corner and watched my family come back to life. I don't need anything more. I closed the book, set it on the windowsill. In the morning, Hazel would find it. Luca might read it. Celeste might smile. And I would keep doing what I always did. Loving them in silence and in song. And letting them go a little with each beautiful day. Because that's what grandmothers do. We promise. And we stay.